Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coach John Runs His K Cold, brought to you by the Sports Reclamation Project. I'm your friendly neighborhood youth coach, Coach John, and as always, thank you for stopping by. Gonna make a little change today. We normally do the shameless plugs and everything, and I talk about my personal life, and there's plenty of time for that. But over the last week, unless you've had your head in the sand, you realize there's some pretty big news that has came across, and I don't want to get into details about what it is, but not much of it has been good. And politics aside, gun violence aside, I just want to tell a little bit about my story, but I want to start it with a question. Coaches, if you were to pass away of any cause today and your funeral was coming up, would the players that returned have positive stories that were true? Would people have to make up stories to make you seem like you were better than what you were? Would anybody even show up? If you were to pass away, would they talk about your win-loss record? Or would they talk about the impact you had on your players, your community, your sport? Just something to think about with what's going on in the news. Now, what I'm going to get into may be a little triggering for some people, so this is my trigger warning. But I want to talk about me. And as you can tell, I don't have the pep in my voice and everything I normally do because this is a very heavy topic. But I can help out. I need to do my part. I'm sorry I'm getting a little emotional, but as you guys know, I'm a basketball referee and I'm a coach. Refereeing was my first job and something I've continued to do for over 25 years. I've coached about 20. In my estimate, I have called over 400 basketball games, and I've coached in countless. I've had to draw plays in one and make calls in the other. I've had to make calls from the bench as a coach. Making calls in both roles have been a part of my job since I can remember. Have I always been right? Absolutely not. But I've made them and I've stood by them. I stand by every call I've ever made. However, there is one call above others that I can't tell you how glad I am I made it. All right. As you know, I'm a veteran, United States Navy. I did 13 years. For 12 years, I was medically retired. A lot of people don't know that I suffer from diagnosed borderline personality disorder, an anxiety disorder, an obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Chances are I was born with some of this. I mean, you can't deny it. Chances are I was born with some of this. However, a childhood full of trauma and military service did not help that condition. Now, if you know me on the surface level, I tell people I was discharged from my hip, and that's a half truth. Yes, I did have a major hip operation that set me back, but the ticket home from the military were the conditions I mentioned above. These conditions have caused me actually in life to have a love-hate relationship with the game of basketball. But I've always loved refereeing and coaching. Maybe I'm a masochist. I don't know. I don't know why, but I just love it. It's been a great way for me to stay around the game I grew up playing and teach it to the next generation. Like I said, I'm a teacher at heart. In those 400 plus years and 20 plus years, 400 plus games, and 20 plus years on the sidelines, it's safe to assume I made thousands of calls. Some meaningless, some necessary, some that may have changed momentum in a game, a season, who knows? But I've made a lot of calls. Sorry. However, the most important call I've ever made was a phone call. And the number I called was 1-888-828-6539. That is the Veterans Crisis Line. In January of 2024, I was let go or voluntarily resigned from a teaching position for sticking up for my daughter. She had been jumped and fought back to defend herself and was suspended. And the fact that this had been addressed prior and the school's administration refused to do anything about it. Like any parent, I blew my stack at her school. I caused a scene, security was involved. Did I handle it the right way? Probably not. But I handled it like a parent. Well, it just so happened to be her school district was in the same school district I was employed by, and her principal called human resources, and I was dismissed from my job. And on that way home, I had a painful realization that the only job I'd wanted to have since I was a kid was a teacher. And I believed in many ways this was my third strike. I had left my first district due to personal reasons around the family move. My second district, I left due to safety reasons. I had a student be stabbed in front of me at the bus stop, and I just didn't feel safe there. 3 strikes meant I was out in my mind. On that long car ride home, and I say it was long, but it was probably only 5 miles to the house I was living in at the time, I reflected on the career that I had pissed away. And I felt I had no other options. My marriage at the time was in serious trouble, and later ended due to my ex-wife and mine's divorce. We're amicable now, but as you know, divorce is difficult. I had no money. I had no connections. I had no prospects. I felt like a loser. I felt like I failed as a father and a provider, and coaching was the last thing on my mind. I called my now ex on the way home to tell her what was going on and tell her how I was feeling and how dark I had gotten. She knew I had depression. She knew I battled with anxiety. And I was simply told to find a job. This was during that peak depression. The following day, I was followed up by a text from her to sign up for DoorDash to get that hurt because I needed support and I wasn't getting it. I had all this education and the people I cared about, all they thought I was capable of was DoorDash. The first thing I thought was, at least if I die, my family will get my life insurance. Began to think. That thought quickly turned into more deliberate thought, and before I knew it, I had a plan. I was going to end my life. Yet something happened to me on the way to doing so as I began to write my note in one of the many notebooks I had around my house. Sorry. I found a place where my youngest had drew a picture. Undeterred, I was scrolling through my phone for a picture of my kids together. They were the last thing I wanted to see before I died. Damn, I love them kids, and I knew I missed them. But I simply knew I could not provide for them. At least I'd have the life insurance right. But a funny thing happened on the way to finding the right picture. I ended up going through all the pictures on my phone that I had of them. And as I ended up with the one I wanted, I looked at it for what I thought would be the last normal time. And I felt them looking at me through the picture. Their eyes transfixed on mine, I began to cry. And through my tears, I realized I couldn't leave them. So I called that crisis line, and I spoke with a counselor, provided me resources, and helped me find a doctor. I'm better now because I made that call. That call was more important than any baseline play I drew up, any press break I applied, any call behind the whistle I made. That was the best call I ever made. Am I better now? Yeah. Depression is still crippling at times, and my anxiety goes through the roof. My divorce is final, and I found a new school and job. I wasn't out of teaching. It was not miraculous by any means. And hell, I still struggle every day to keep a positive mindset. I still coach basketball, and I referee occasionally, and I still find hope in that. But no matter the game or circumstances, every time I blow the whistle, the call that follows only has the potential of being the second best call I've ever made. I know this isn't what you normally hear. You normally hear sports anecdotes and stories, but the world we live in is cynical. Coaching is a tough job. If it wasn't a tough job, there wouldn't be a shortage. People often forget that the coach is a person. People often forget that everybody's a person. When I first started writing about my depression and blogging about my depression, I tried early in my career, and I was told by a principal I worked for, some people might be uncomfortable hearing about that as an educator. Well, my response is, and will still be the same, if you're uncomfortable hearing about it, try freaking living with it every day. But please, if you or someone you know is in crisis, seek help. It is obvious that the mental health of the world is not great. But if you are in crisis or you need help, talk to somebody. You're worth more on this earth than you know. I often tell people my name is Coach John, and it is. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I'm a father. But most importantly, I'm a survivor. And that's about enough of that. Friends, if you need help and don't know where to go, message me on Facebook at the Sports Reclamation Project. Find me on Instagram at _Sports Reclamation Project. I don't even care if I get a follow, reach out. I will help you find. I can't provide service, but I will help you find somebody to talk to. If you're a veteran, please call our crisis line. You need to email someone just to talk to. John at sportsreclamationproject.com. Take care of one another. The world is a very ugly place, but one person at a time, we can make it more beautiful. This is John with the Sports Reclamation Project. We'll talk later.